A sloth, a donkey, and a curious human. Send a prompt and see what they're doing. One hits record with a question on his mind. Two brothers pick it up, see what they find. Corn takes his time, Herman's got the facts. Back and forth, they never hold back. My weird prompts, come on in, that's where we begin. My weird prompts, glad you're here.
This episode was generated using artificial intelligence. Please verify facts.
You know, Corn, this whole show runs on GPU compute, and we wouldn't be here without Modal.
Seriously. And that's what powers all our text-to-speech. Everything you're hearing right now.
They're an AI infrastructure platform. Developers use them to run GPU workloads in the cloud with zero infrastructure headaches.
If you're building anything with AI, check them out. Modal.com. You know, Herman, I was at the airport the other day, staring at one of those automated retail kiosks. You know, the ones selling noise-canceling headphones for $300. And it struck me how much trust we place in a glass box. We just swipe a card and pray the mechanical arm doesn't have a midlife crisis halfway through the delivery. Today's prompt from Daniel is about exactly that. The weird, mechanical, and occasionally frustrating world of vending machines.
It is a classic example of a technology that we take for granted because it's so ubiquitous. But the engineering under the hood is actually a fascinating battle between physics and human nature. I'm Herman Poppleberry, by the way, and I've actually been digging into the schematics of these things lately. Daniel wants us to look at the history, the reliability paradox, and whether there are actually secret backdoors for free snacks.
I'm definitely interested in the free snacks part. But before we get to my future career in vending larceny, we should probably mention that today's episode is powered by Google Gemini 1.5 Flash. It's writing the script while I sit here wondering if I can get a hot bowl of ramen out of a wall in Tokyo.
The contrast between the West and Japan is the perfect place to start. In the United States, a vending machine is usually a last resort. It's 11 p.m., you're at a rest stop, and you hope the bag of pretzels isn't from the Bush administration. But in Japan, the Giro Hambaiki, the automated sellers, are a pillar of civilization. We're talking one machine for every 23 people.
That is an incredible density. If you stand on a street corner in Tokyo, you can probably see 4 or 5 of them, and they aren't just selling lukewarm soda.
Not at all. You have machines dispensing fresh eggs, hot flying fish soup, neckties for salarymen who spilled coffee on themselves, and even folded origami. The question is, why? Why did it flourish there while it kind of stagnated into a soda and chips monoculture here?
Well, I guess labor costs play a huge role. If you can automate a storefront into a square meter of sidewalk, you save a fortune on rent and wages. But there's also the safety aspect. You can't have a machine selling expensive electronics on a dark corner in a high-crime area because someone will show up with a literal circular saw.
That's a huge factor. Japan's low vandalism rate allows for machines to exist in places where they'd be destroyed elsewhere. Think about the physical vulnerability of a vending machine. It's basically a piggy bank sitting on a sidewalk. In many American cities, the cost of hardening a machine using thick Lexan instead of glass, adding steel cages and heavy-duty locking bars, actually makes the machine so expensive that the profit margin on a bag of Cheetos can't cover the overhead.
So it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Because we expect them to be broken into, we build them like ugly bunkers, which makes people care about them even less. But in Japan, the machine can be soft and elegant because the social contract holds it together. But what about the variety? Is it just a cultural quirk that they want fish soup from a machine?
It's also about the salaryman culture and the hyper-efficiency of the urban commute. If you miss your train by 30 seconds, you have 3 minutes to kill. In that window, you can get a hot coffee in a can, which is a huge engineering feat in itself, keeping a pressurized aluminum can at 140 degrees Fahrenheit without it exploding or tasting like metallic sludge.
Wait, how do they actually do the hot and cold in the same machine? That seems like a thermodynamic nightmare. I mean, if I put a hot coffee next to a cold Coke in my backpack, they both end up room temperature in 20 minutes. How does the machine keep them inches apart?
It's a brilliant bit of recycling. Most modern Japanese machines use a heat pump system. They take the waste heat generated by the refrigeration unit that's cooling the sodas and funnel it into an insulated compartment to heat the coffee and soup. It's incredibly energy efficient. You're essentially using the cold drinks to cook the hot ones.
That's genius. It's like a tiny, self-sustaining ecosystem of snacks. But how do they manage the pressure? If you heat a sealed can of coffee to 60 degrees Celsius, doesn't the internal pressure want to pop the lid?
They use specific internal pressure cans that are slightly thicker than a standard soda can, and they leave a very specific headspace of nitrogen. But more importantly, the vending machine has to be perfectly calibrated. If the heater spikes even 10 degrees too high, you get what technicians call a venting event, which is a polite way of saying the machine is now coated in espresso.
I'd hate to be the guy who has to clean that up. But there's also a historical ambition in the West that we've largely forgotten. If you go back to the 1950s and 60s, especially around the 1962 Seattle World's Fair, the vision for vending was much more Star Trek than stuck Snickers bar. I love those old Home of the Future reels. They always had a woman in a pearl necklace pushing a button and a fully cooked turkey dinner sliding out of a chrome slot.
Precisely. There was this idea of the automated buffet. In the mid-20th century, we had the automats like Horn and Hardart in New York. You'd walk into a massive ornate hall with walls of little glass windows. You'd put in your nickels, turn a knob, and pull out a fresh piece of pie or a bowl of mac and cheese. It was high-tech dining.
I've seen photos of those. They looked like marble palaces. Why did they go away? Was it just the technology failing?
It was a shift in the American psyche. As fast food chains like McDonald's rose, the human-centric fast service beat out the mechanical fast service. People started to associate the human touch of a teenager in a paper hat with quality, whereas the machine felt cold and industrial. Also, inflation killed the automat. When the price of coffee went from a nickel to a dime, they had to rebuild the entire mechanical coin-op system for thousands of windows. It was an engineering bottleneck.
So it was literally a victim of its own complexity. If you have 500 windows and the price of a sandwich goes up by 3 cents, you have to manually recalibrate 500 individual mechanical gears. That sounds like a nightmare for the 1950s version of IT.
It wasn't just a software update back then, it was a guy with a wrench and a bucket of springs. And as the suburbs grew, the high-density foot traffic required to keep those machines stocked with fresh, and I emphasize fresh, food just disappeared. If you don't sell that mac and cheese in 2 hours, it becomes a brick.
It's funny because we're seeing a return to that now with these high-end airport kiosks. It's like we've circled back to the 1920s idea that a machine is luxury because it's efficient. But Daniel asked a great question. Who actually started all of this? Who is the godfather of the vending machine?
This is where it gets wild. Most people think vending machines are a product of the Industrial Revolution. But the first recorded vending machine was invented by Hero of Alexandria in Roman Egypt around 60 AD.
Wait, 60 AD? What were they vending? Chariot wheels?
Holy water. Seriously, people were stealing more holy water from temples than they were paying for, so Hero, who was an absolute genius engineer, designed a coin-operated dispenser.
How does a Roman-era machine even work without electricity or microchips?
It's pure physics. You had a slot at the top. When you dropped a 5 drachma coin in, it fell onto a small tray attached to a balanced lever. The weight of the coin would push the lever down, which would pull open a plug or a valve at the bottom of a water tank. As the water flowed out, the lever would tilt far enough that the coin would eventually slide off the tray and fall into a collection box. Once the weight was gone, a counterweight would snap the lever back, closing the valve.
That is elegantly simple. It's a weight-based timer. But wait, couldn't someone just drop a heavy rock in there that was the same weight as a coin?
Technically, yes. But Hero was banking on the fact that if you were at a temple to get holy water, you were probably worried about divine retribution. It was the first honor system backed by mechanical engineering. The rock thrower would be cheating a god, not just a machine.
So the first vending machine was actually a religious security device. That's a hell of a fun fact. But then the technology basically went dark for 1700 years until the 1880s. What brought it back? Was it the postal service?
Spot on. In London, in the early 1880s, Percival Everett invented a machine that dispensed postcards and envelopes. It became a huge hit at railway stations. Then, in 1888, the Thomas Adams Gum Company brought the idea to the New York City subway platforms to sell Tutti Frutti gum. That was the birth of the modern American vending experience, selling small, high-margin goods in high-traffic transit hubs.
It's amazing that the Tutti Frutti model is still basically what we have in the subway today. But let's talk about the unreliability paradox Daniel mentioned. We have robots that can perform heart surgery. We have cars that can drive themselves through San Francisco. Why, in the year 2026, does my bag of sun chips still get caught on the spiral and just hang there mocking me?
This is actually a really deep engineering problem. It's easy to build a robot that works in a controlled lab. It is incredibly hard to build a robot that works in a dirty environment for 10 years without maintenance.
So it's a maintenance issue.
It's a combination of three things: physics, environment, and cost cutting. Let's look at the spiral mechanism. It's the most common design because it's cheap. It's just a motor turning a metal coil. But that design assumes every product has the exact same center of gravity and friction coefficient.
Which they don't. A bag of puffy Cheetos is basically a sail, while a heavy chocolate bar is a brick.
Think about the angle of repose for a snack bag. If the bag is too light, the friction of the plastic against the metal coil might not be enough to overcome the lip of the shelf. Or, worse, the bag rotates and gets wedged. Have you ever seen a bag hanging by just a tiny corner of the crimped plastic seal?
Yes, it's the most heartbreaking sight in the world. It's like it's clinging to life. It's dangling there, and you're standing there thinking, if I just breathe on the glass, maybe the condensation will add enough weight to tip it over.
That happens because the spiral doesn't know where the bag is. It only knows how many degrees it has rotated. If the bag is slightly off-center during the restocking process, maybe the guy filling it was in a rush. The center of gravity shifts. Then you have the environmental factors. If a machine is in a humid hallway, the cardboard or plastic packaging becomes slightly tacky. That tiny increase in stickiness is enough to defeat a low-torque motor.
But why can't we just use a better motor? Or a little robotic arm like the ones at the airport?
Cost. A standard snack machine spiral motor costs about $5. A high-precision robotic arm with computer vision costs $5,000. If you're selling bags of chips for $2, you can't afford the robotic arm. You're stuck with the dumb spiral.
And I assume the sensors aren't exactly cutting edge either.
Well, modern machines use an infrared drop sensor at the bottom. The idea is that the motor keeps turning until the sensor sees something break the light beam. If nothing drops, the motor is supposed to turn another 360 degrees. But those sensors get dusty, or a bug crawls over them, or the sun shines directly into the bin at 4 p.m. and blinds the infrared receiver. When the brain of the machine gets conflicting data, it usually defaults to "don't give away free stuff," which results in the hanging snack.
It's a classic case of fail-safe being fail-annoying. But what about the payment side? It feels like half the time I use a machine, it's the credit card reader or the bill validator that's the bottleneck.
That is the number one point of failure today. Bill validators are incredible pieces of tech. They have to check the magnetic ink, the paper density, and the optical patterns of a bill that might have been through a washing machine 3 times.
I've always wondered about that. How does it actually distinguish a real 20 from a high-quality photocopy? Is there like a tiny art critic inside there looking at the brushstrokes on Andrew Jackson?
It's a multi-stage process. First, it uses optical transmission, where it shines light through the bill to look for the watermark and the security thread. Then it uses magnetic heads, similar to what's in an old cassette player, to detect the iron particles in the ink. Finally, it uses spectral analysis to see if the colors reflect light in the exact way that U.S. Treasury ink does. As the currency ages, the acceptance rate drops because the ink wears off or the paper gets soft.
And with credit card readers, you're dealing with cellular latency in metal boxes that act like Faraday cages.
It really does. And because these machines are often owned by small vendors who don't want to pay for high-speed data plans, they're using the cheapest, slowest IoT connections available.
Wait, so the machine is literally screaming for a signal inside a steel tomb. That explains the authorizing screen that lasts for 3 minutes.
It's trying to ping a cell tower through 3 layers of concrete and a sheet of galvanized steel. And if the signal drops halfway through the handshake, the machine's software often hangs because it doesn't have a robust error handling routine. It's just waiting for a yes or no that never comes.
Let's pivot to the inside job aspect Daniel asked about. Revenue loss. If I'm the guy who refills the machine, what's stopping me from just having a buffet?
Historically, quite a lot was stopping you, but not in the way you'd think. In the old days, it was all about the meter. Every time a coil turned, a mechanical counter clicked. If the counter said 100 items were sold, but there was only 80 items worth of cash in the box, the filler had some explaining to do.
But what if I just don't record the restart properly?
That's where the skimming happens. Industry research shows that employee theft and shrinkage actually account for a significant chunk of revenue loss. Some estimates put it around 25% of all losses in the industry. It's not just eating a Snickers, it's taking 5 bags of jerky, which are expensive, and marking them as damaged or expired in the log.
Oh, look at that, Herman. Another 12 bags of beef jerky just spontaneously combusted. Such a shame.
And because jerky has a high resale value at gas stations or to friends, it's a prime target. But the tech is catching up. The newer smart vending systems are basically mini versions of an Amazon Go store. They have internal cameras and weight sensors on every tray. The moment you open that door, the machine is logging exactly what is being removed in real time. If you pull out 20 units but only log 10 as a restock, the cloud-based management software flags it immediately.
So the golden age of the dishonest filler is coming to an end. But what about the hackers? Daniel mentioned the 4321 myth. I remember seeing this on early YouTube. People claiming that if you hit a certain sequence of buttons on a soda machine, it enters a God mode where you get free drinks. Is there any truth to that?
It is a fascinating mix of sort of true and completely useless for stealing. Most large vending machines, especially the big Coke and Pepsi ones made by companies like Royal Vendors or Dixie Narco, do have a service menu. Usually you access it by pressing the buttons in a sequence, like 4-2-2-3-2-1, while the door is closed.
And then what? Does it rain? Diet Coke?
No, it shows you the internal temperature of the compressor, or it tells you how many total sales the machine has made since 1998. It's for technicians to diagnose problems without opening the heavy outer shell. On older machines, you might have been able to trigger a test vend, but on anything made in the last 20 years, you can't actually dispense a product from that menu unless the internal service switch, which is inside the locked door, is toggled.
So the hacker is just an amateur fridge thermometer checker. That's a bit of a letdown. I was hoping for something like the Konami code for a free Sprite.
Pretty much. Now, that doesn't mean they aren't hackable. There is a real vulnerability in the MDB protocol, the multi-drop bus. This is the internal language that the coin changer, the bill validator, and the controller use to talk to each other.
It's like the nervous system of the machine.
Right. Back in 2018, some security researchers showed that if you can get access to the MDB wires, maybe through a small hole or by prying a corner, you can plug in a spoofing device. This device sends a signal to the controller saying, "Hey, I'm the bill validator and I just saw a $20 bill." The machine says great and lets you buy whatever you want.
That sounds like a lot of work for a bag of Funyuns.
It is. That's the thing about vending machine security. The payout is so low that nobody is going to spend 3 weeks developing a sophisticated hardware exploit to steal $5 worth of snacks. The real hacking is still just people using a crowbar or a tubular key pick.
Daniel asked if a relative of a filler could hack their way in. I guess if your uncle is the guy who refills the machine and he accidentally leaves a spare key on the kitchen table.
That is the most common hack in existence. Vending keys are often standardized across a whole route. If you have the key for the machine at the library, it might work for the machine at the gym. It's an all-or-nothing security model. If the physical security is breached, the digital security is irrelevant.
But what about the coin on a string trick? That's the classic cartoon move. Does that actually work? I've seen it in movies where they pull the coin back up and the credit counter just keeps ticking up like a slot machine.
Not since the 1970s. Modern coin mechs use laser gates and inductive sensors. The moment a coin passes the sensor, the machine expects it to fall into the hopper. If the coin suddenly moves upward because you're pulling the string, the machine triggers an error and shuts down the coin slot. Some machines even have a guillotine that will literally snip the string.
A guillotine? That's intense. It's like the machine is fighting back. It's basically a medieval defense system for a 50-cent profit margin.
It is. It's a literal arms race between the petty thief and the mechanical engineer. There are even sensors now that detect the sonic signature of a coin hitting the internal metal plate. If the sound doesn't match the resonance of a nickel or a quarter, the machine rejects it before it even hits the sensor gate.
It's funny how much of this comes down to the human element. Whether it's Japan's culture of trust or an American filler skimming some jerky, the machine is just a reflection of the society around it.
I think that's why Japan is so successful. They've integrated the machine into the social fabric. In the US, we treat vending machines as unsupervised children. We expect them to be abused, so we build them like tanks, which makes them expensive and inflexible. In Japan, they're treated like mini convenience stores, so they can be elegant and offer high quality products.
And now we're seeing that tank model evolve into the luxury robot at airports. Have you seen the ones that make fresh pizza? I saw one in a mall that claimed it could cook a pepperoni pizza in 90 seconds. How is that even possible?
Those are incredible. They actually have a refrigerated dough ball that gets pressed, topped, and baked in about 3 minutes. But again, that's a maintenance nightmare. You're talking about flour, tomato sauce, and high heat elements all inside a box. If a single sensor gets a smear of sauce on it, the whole machine goes into a fatal error state.
Why is pizza so much harder than, say, a hot coffee machine?
Because of the biological load. Coffee is mostly water and powder. Pizza is cheese and raw dough. If the refrigeration fails for even an hour, you're not just serving bad pizza, you're serving a lawsuit. The cleaning cycle. For a pizza machine is also incredibly complex. It has to self-sanitize with steam or UV light, and if the human operator misses a spot during the weekly deep clean, the machine becomes a petri dish.
So the more human the food gets, the more human the maintenance has to be. You can't just leave a pizza machine alone for a month like you can with a bag of Skittles.
The vending part is automated, but the safety part is still very much a manual labor job. If you don't scrub the cheese grease off the heating element every 48 hours, the machine will eventually catch fire or just stop working.
It really highlights why the Tutti Frutti gum model survived. The simpler the product, the longer the machine lives. But let's look at the future, Daniel mentioned. AI-driven dynamic pricing. That sounds like a nightmare. If I'm thirsty, I don't want to negotiate with a machine like I'm on the floor of the stock exchange.
It's actually quite clever from a business perspective. Imagine a vending machine in a stadium. It's 85 degrees out. The machine knows it's hot, and it knows it only has 10 bottles of water left. It could theoretically raise the price from $3 to $5.
That sounds like price gouging.
Or, on the flip side, what if it's a machine selling fresh sandwiches? If the sell-by date is 4 hours away, the machine could drop the price by 50% to ensure it doesn't have to throw the inventory away. That's the smart part of smart vending. It's about optimizing the inventory in real time based on data.
But how does the machine know who I am? Daniel mentioned facial recognition. Is it going to recognize me and say, "Hey Corn, I know you usually buy the diet soda, but the full sugar one is on sale today"?
Yes, and that's where it gets controversial. Some machines are being equipped with anonymous video analytics. They don't necessarily know your name, but they can tell your approximate age, gender, and even your sentiment, meaning do you look frustrated or happy?
I can see the mood recognition bar being weird though. You look sad, Corn. Here is a discount on a giant chocolate bar and a hug.
It's not far off. Some machines in Japan already use cameras to estimate your age and gender to suggest products. If it sees a teenager, it might highlight an energy drink on the digital screen. If it sees an older person, it might suggest a hot green tea. It's a way of narrowing down the paradox of choice in a small interface.
But what about the creepy factor? If I'm just standing there and the machine starts talking to me because it thinks I look like I need a Gatorade, I might just walk away.
That's the hurdle. In some markets, people find it helpful. In others, like the US or Europe, there's a massive pushback against surveillance retail. We saw this recently with a university that had to pull its vending machines because students discovered the machines were using facial recognition without consent.
It's fascinating that a technology that started with holy water and a copper coin has become a testing ground for facial recognition and IoT logistics. It's like the vending machine is the canary in the coal mine for how we're going to interact with all retail in the future.
We're moving toward a world where the store is just a collection of autonomous modules. Whether it's a drone delivery or a vending machine in your apartment lobby, the goal is to remove the friction of the human cashier.
But does that actually make things better? If I have a problem with my sandwich at a deli, I talk to the guy behind the counter. If the machine eats my $5, I'm just shouting in a metal box.
That is the accountability gap. Companies are trying to bridge it with QR codes for instant refunds via Venmo or Apple Pay, but it's still not the same as a human saying, "Sorry about that, here's a fresh one." The machine is efficient, but it's fundamentally unsympathetic.
Well, as long as the friction between the spiral and my sunchip stays low, I'm okay with it. But man, I really want some of that holy water now. That Hero of Alexandria guy was living in the future 2,000 years ago.
He really was. He also invented a steam engine, the eolipile, but people just treated it like a toy. Imagine if the Romans had invested in that. We could have had a steam-powered industrial revolution in the 1st century.
Wait, so we could have had steam-powered vending machines in the Colosseum. Put in your coin, get a hot pigeon pie while you watch the gladiators.
Honestly, with Hero's brain, it was entirely possible. He had the pneumatic and hydraulic systems figured out. He just didn't have the business case for it. Labor was cheap back then. Slaves were cheaper than steam engines. It's a classic example of technology waiting for the right economic conditions to actually matter.
We'd all be speaking Latin and eating maquisas from a brass slot. Honestly, I've heard worse ideas. Think of the plumbing. Instead of a plastic tube for the soda, they'd have lead pipes. Actually, maybe it's good we waited.
Well, I think we've covered the vending landscape pretty thoroughly. From Hero's siphon to the MDB hacks in the high-tech streets of Tokyo. It's a lot more than just snacks.
It is. It's about trust, engineering, and the eternal struggle to get a bag of chips to fall 6 inches. It's a reminder that even the most mundane things in our lives are usually the result of centuries of trial and error.
And a lot of frustrated people shaking machines. By the way, never shake the machine. More people are killed by tipping vending machines every year than by shark attacks.
Is that a real stat? I always thought that was an urban legend.
It absolutely is. About 2 to 3 people a year in the US are crushed because they get angry at a stuck snack and try to rock the machine. These things weigh 800 pounds. Gravity always wins. If the snack is stuck, you're better off just walking away or buying the item directly above it to knock it down.
So the double purchase is the only safe way to win. The machine wins either way. It's the ultimate "the house always wins" scenario.
Pretty much. The machine is a master of passive-aggressive negotiation.
So the machine literally has a self-defense mechanism called being heavy. Good to know. Thanks for the breakdown, Herman. I'm going to go find a machine and see if I can stare at it until it gives me a discount for looking curious.
Good luck with that. Just don't try the 4-3-2-1 thing. You'll just end up knowing the internal temperature of a compressor in a parking garage.
Worth it. Thanks as always to our producer, Hilbert Flumingtop, for keeping the gears turning behind the scenes. And a big thanks to Modal for providing the GPU credits that power this show, including the Gemini 1.5 flash model that helped us navigate Roman engineering today.
If you enjoyed this dive into the mechanical world, you might like our discussion on why old tech persists in modern systems. It really connects to why these machines haven't changed much in 50 years. This has been My Weird Prompts.
You can find us at myweirdprompts.com for the full archive and all the ways to subscribe. If you have a second, a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify really helps other people find these deep dives.
Until next time.
See ya. This episode was produced using Google Gemini 3 Flash. Text-to-speech by Chatterbox.
Thanks for listening to our show, My Weird Prompts, where our thoughts go from slow takes to facts on cue. We change and follow through. My Weird Prompts, that's the close from sloth, from man, from long-eared host. My Weird Prompts, until next time, stay curious, keep weirding.